Welcome back to our third episode of Real Estate, Wealth, and Overall Health. Marilyn here.
And I'm Adriano, and today we got a great episode. And today we're going to be talking about health in general, health of your portfolio, health of the real estate market, and health on what we do to keep ourselves going during good times and bad times. It's some of the things that we do to keep us going. So I guess the first thing we should talk about, Marilyn, is the health of the market. So, I mean, things have changed. What are you seeing in the market right now going into the spring market?
So we are actually still experiencing a shortage in inventory, and in a lot of pockets we are seeing multiple offers. We went on one last night with a buyer, and there was 17 offers in the Vaughan area, which is just north of Toronto. So things have, with the shortage of inventory, things have picked up in a sense. We're not seeing the prices that, let's say, that exact house would have sold for a year ago in, March of 2022. However, activity, buyers are not, shy to pull the trigger and write up offers. We are seeing a lot more activities. Buyers are coming out of the woodworks, and there's definitely in certain pockets, again, we are seeing bidding wars. So that is a healthy sign. There is activity. It's still, we need that to happen to stimulate the market. And so that's definitely one thing that we've noticed, that inventory still remains low. And I also think that's probably because a lot of sellers are shy, or they're, worried, like, with this market change, where we were at last year, how much is my house? They're comparing to their price that they could have, let's say, sold for a year ago, right? So I think that it's a little bit mindset. And also, once the snow starts to melt, we definitely do see a lot more people just in general, they'd rather move without, where we're in Canada here, there's a lot of snow. They would rather move in the, let's say, spring and summer months than in the winter that we have here.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally the rule of thumb, isn't it, like springtime you look, especially if you have kids, you maybe take a month or two to look for a house, then a 2 or 3 month closing so that you close in the summer, so your child will move and go into a new school come September. I guess that's the rule of thumb. But so there are a lot of people out there like, oh, multiple offers. Well, sure, if I listed at $100,000, I'm going to have multiple offers, and that is true, right? But what I find that I'm seeing is, yeah, maybe the prices of the property are maybe undervalued a little bit, but the thing that is impressing me is that there are buyers out there. Like there were 17 offers on a property. So that means that there are buyers out there looking to buy. So it's not a dead market. It's just the market has to be priced properly and the buyers will be there. And I think that is a good sign.
Definitely, I think that, and also there are certain pockets that are just not as available. There's not as much turnover, so we also have to factor that in. It's supply and demand, right? So if you're in a pocket that, not very much properties come to market, period, then obviously there's going to be a lot more people, interested in looking in that specific neighborhood because not that many come up. So when you would be putting out a property for sale, there would be that much more already just out of the gate that are looking to potentially put an offer on a property that comes in, a nice area that they've been wanting to get into for some time, but unfortunately just inventory is low. So I think it does come down to supply and demand for sure.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too that I've been noticing. I read a lot of articles about interest rates and stuff, and hey, don't get me wrong, those affect people, but what people have to understand is some of these neighborhoods where people have been there for 20, 25, 30 years, they may not have mortgages, or if they do, they're very, very minimal. And so they don't need to sell if rates change because it doesn't make a difference for them. So yes, if someone's bought in the last few years and rates have changed and they're on a variable, yes, there's going to maybe be some issues. But some of these established areas, people don't have to sell if they don't get the money they want. And so the inventory is just low, and it doesn't matter whether it's in a high market, a low market, it's low in general. So that's what I'm finding as well.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about, on a personal note, we definitely want all our listeners and viewers to get to know us a little bit. So let's start with a few things that help us to stay, optimal performance and keep us feeling really good throughout our, busy days and busy lifestyles that we lead. What are a few things that, let's start with one thing that's important to you and that you value, that you feel helps you throughout your busy, hectic schedule, Adriano.
Yeah, well, for sure. I played hockey my whole life. So since I was 7 years old, I've always been active and skating and doing something. So for me, even though I don't play hockey as much, uh, doing something athletic at least 5 to 6 times a day is something important to me. Half an hour to an hour, whether it's yoga, whether it's weight training, whether it's going to skate with my buddies. But I find that's very important. It just gives you a good break. It either starts the day, if you do it in the morning, it starts the day and you feel good and it pushes you through, or it gives you a good break in the day if you're able to go maybe for an hour and a half just to kind of clear your mind. So I think that's very important to me. Is there one thing that maybe you do that maybe you started doing or you've done for a long time that really sets you in a good frame of mind?
Definitely, I say get a good night's sleep. I think that when we're tired and we've only slept for 4 or 5 hours, we don't realize until that next day where it just you feel sluggish and you might get that brain fog. So I think that getting a good enough sleep, it reduces stress. It gives you energy for the next day. You have clarity, easier to advise and guide the clients, which is most of the time what we do. So I think rest is a big thing as well. Exercise for sure is huge. And you should be exercising a few times a week. Some, as you mentioned, strength training as well as some cardio. Even on a nice day, get out when it's the sun is out, have a nice walk, and get some vitamin D, get some fresh air. But I definitely think that a balance between some rest and some physical activity is definitely important. It's something that I'm a strong believer in. And I think that it does make a big difference for sure. Mindset is definitely important.
Yeah, and I mean, like I've been learning the last 3 or 4 years. I've really tried to focus on, my mindset, my growth as a person and stuff like that. And I look at a lot of breathing techniques. I've been trying that kind of stuff. I've been taking cold showers, which I'm not a fan of, but they actually work for certain things if you believe in that stuff. Meditation to some extent, goal setting. So there's a lot of good things that I think help just clear your mind and help you focus on yourself and what you want, and then you can move forward. So I think there's a combination of things. It's like anything else. If you only do one, I think it's not enough. You have to have a combination and a good balance of a lot of different things in your life. And that's me personally. I'm not sure if you feel the same about that.
I think also finding activities that you enjoy, sometimes trying something new. A great example, I just tried my first F45 class the other day, and I'm still feeling kind of sore after that. But I think if we find activities that we enjoy, that will make the day, a little bit more exciting and enjoyable. You're meeting new people, you're trying something new, you're challenging yourself. So definitely trying something new, whether that's running, joining a book club, if you like to paint, you're into art, paint night, something like that. I think it's always nice to try something new and be able to just, have something to look forward to. And again, have a little bit of a balance, work-life balance. I'm trying to do a little bit more of that myself because it seems like a lot of our hours are just, around the work clock. And it is important to sometimes be able to disconnect and punch out, even if it's just for a little break, for sure.
No, I agree with that. So that's great. I know one F45 class and then a week or two of yoga to stretch yourself back out. I know how it works. So trust me, I've been in your shoes, but that's great. So moving forward with health, I mean, we talked a little bit about ourselves, but the health of someone's portfolio is important at this time because, there is rising interest rates. People can put their money into the stock market or into GICs and stuff like that. And so when looking at someone's portfolio, at least with rental properties, I mean, when you have a rental property, the perfect thing that you want in a rental property is appreciation, to pay down principal or equity, and to be cash flow positive. Those are the three main things that you look for in a perfect rental property. And right now with maybe rising interest rates, some people may be stuck, maybe they're not in a cash flow position, maybe things are looking tight. What kind of advice might you have for people, like that?
So definitely, I would say an important factor in renting out your property, because we've heard a lot of unfortunate stories with some people in general, and whether they're clients or potential clients that have rented privately and had unfortunate situations, whether or not the tenant didn't want to move out or they stopped paying. Sometimes it is due to financial situations. I would definitely say it is important. Like, this is your home, this is your asset, who you have living in your property. So do the research, do the due diligence, check the credit of the individual, screen the tenant, because you want to have, sometimes better to be, maybe $50 less a month, but have, AAA tenant, someone that's going to respect your property. Of course, they're living there, so it's going to be lived in. We have to be realistic. However, we just want to have that peace of mind and make sure that you have a tenant that you're comfortable with and that's going to pay you every month, right? To be able to help you offset your expenses, whether that be mortgages, taxes, utilities, etc. So that's definitely one important factor, I think, is take your time and find a good tenant. That would be the advice that I would have.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I agree with that. Finding the right tenant. And I do think, and I said this, I think, last podcast, the quality of tenants are improving because people can't qualify for mortgages, even though they're making good money. So they have to rent right now. So the quality of tenant is really good, and make sure you screen them and do everything you need to do. But my other question, maybe more importantly, is, there are people where maybe a year or two ago with COVID, rental rates, there was a period where they came down and people were just trying to rent their places out for anything just to get tenants in there. They're good tenants, but they're not paying market value. Now the rents have kind of increased. Now you're stuck with a rent from maybe 2 years ago. And if you're in a variable mortgage, rates have increased. So now your numbers aren't working. If you're losing money, like, what might be your suggestion? At what point do you think, if you are losing money on a rental, where you're like, hey, maybe I should cut my losses? Is it a couple $100 a month? Is it 1,000? Like, what do you think, or what maybe some advice you can give to people? Because there are people maybe in that situation right now.
So I would do one of two things. Either A, I'd get an evaluation and see where my price would be if I were in the market to sell right now. And that will help based on relevant information. I always say that that's where we help make better decisions rather than, I'd rather see the data and factual information up to date rather than, making an emotional decision that I might regret later on down the road. So I would definitely say looking at, what would I be able to get if I were considering putting my property on the market and selling right now. That would be the first thing. Second, I'm more of a believer the buy and hold, right? So again, if I would just be able to weather the storm, whether that means that, because my now interest rate is up and now my payments, let's say, used to be at $2,000 a month, now I'm at $3,000 and my tenant's only paying $2,500. So now I'm at a loss of $500 every month. At the end of the year, now that's $6,000. I'd like to look at the overall picture and know that even in a normalized market, if we're appreciating at an average of 6 to 7% year over year, if I hold that in the long run, I will be okay, right?
Yeah.
So I think that with most investments, you have to ask yourself, what is your end goal, right? So again, with my investment properties that I currently hold, I know that some months I might be in the negative, but overall, in the time from when I purchased to when I'm looking at executing a sale, whether that be 5 or 8, 10 years down the road, I'm still overall in a positive cash flow, or positive, in terms of equity or appreciation, and that's what matters. We don't look at, day to day, because I think for someone like me, that'll just stress me out and drive me crazy.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just sort of like forget it and then, revisit it when the market's in a little bit of a healthier state. Once that tenant leaves, then you can get new tenants, and with the rents increasing, then that will most likely at least cover, right? So you have to look at all factors, I think, before making decisions.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes people just buy and sell based on life choices and lifestyle circumstances and changes.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there's a certain point where, what's enough's enough, because when I look at it, if you're losing, a lot of money, just by maybe stop losing that, you are bringing that in. Like, if you're paying 10%, or if you're losing 10% a year, and then you get rid of that, you're basically almost saving yourself 10%, right? I mean, I had a client that called me who bought a newer condo a few years back, and so they paid probably a little bit higher than market value, because new condos always demand that when you're buying either pre-construction or when a new condo comes up. So they paid a bit. Now, they've made some money, but if they sell, they're going to pay realtors fees, they're going to have to pay capital gains. There's all these other fees that come in there. So even with that, if you can't make the payments, like at what point, because one of my clients is close to $2,000 in the negative, or not a client, but someone I was speaking with to try to give advice. And I'm thinking that even if the rates come down 1.5%, you're still going to be in a negative cash flow, maybe even only $1,000 or whatever it happens to be. But I mean, at what point do you maybe cut your losses? Because even now, with the market being where it is, maybe the appreciation isn't going to be 5 or 6% now. Over a long period, it is, but short term, if they're tight, if they're stuck, do you still think that they should try to hold through it? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just for people out there that might be in this situation, things to consider maybe.
I think that it's important not to panic. I'm a firm believer, try to ride the wave. I was in a similar situation with one of my properties, and that's what I chose to do. I just chose to wait it out. The tenant and his fiance, they ended up having a child, so they just outgrew the space and they ended up moving on to something that was more, I guess, suitable for their growing family. And once I was able to get the new tenant in, now at least it's covering and I have a bit of a positive cash flow every month. So once again, I'm a firm believer in, unless you have to sell, then you just buy and hold. Because again, in the long run, I think that real estate, is a great investment, one of the best that we can make in Canada. However, depending on the lifestyle circumstances, again, based on someone's financial abilities, if that $500 a month, for example, is causing them not to be able to, have any sort of, be able to do any sort of leisure or luxury activities, whether that be going to the movie with your family or dining out, and now it's affecting your living circumstances, then that may be a reason where it does make sense to, stop the bleed and to trigger a sale. So I think it really depends on each individual's financial situation and be, mindful and sensitive to that.
I agree, and I guess a few things that people can do if your mortgage is coming up for renewal, or if you're in a variable rate and you've had your property maybe for 5 or 10 years, and something that you could do is maybe try to stretch your mortgage back to 30 years again if you've done that, or stretch it back to bring the payments a little bit lower. And then if you have supplementary income, you can always pay your principal down. So those are maybe some things that you can do to kind of get yourself over that hump. But yeah, it's a tough situation right now, and I guess it does come down to your financial well-being. And if you're kind of, like you said, not able to make the basic necessities of life, then you should probably, seriously think of getting rid of it. Just remember that there is going to be capital gains on that if it hasn't been a primary residence, and that will go onto your taxes for the year that you sell. And there's a lot of costs affected with the sale, so you could write some of them off, but just keep that in mind as well. Yeah, Merilyn, so if there are people listening that are in this situation, whether it be a house, whether it be a rental property, your rates have gone up, you didn't expect them to go up this much, and you kind of feel the pinch, or you maybe have a few rental properties and you're like, do I sell one? Do I, maybe you lived in one and then moved out, the other one's a full rental, and you want to know which one is going to be more on capital gains and stuff. Or if you just want to comment, we'd love to hear what you guys have to say about certain situations that you find yourself in. What do you think?
Definitely. If anyone out there has some, stories that they'd like to share around rental properties, or experiences that they've had, or, let's ask the audience as well. We're interested to hear your comments. If you're in a negative cash position, would you sell? Comment below, and we'd love to hear what you guys have to say. So that's it for our episode today. And if you have any topics that you'd like for us to discuss in one of our upcoming episodes, please message us on one of our platforms or comment on one of the platforms.
And until next time, remember, take care of your real estate, your wealth, and your overall health.